Girls, what is your. He seemed normal on the first date, but after that, things got weird. Story. We met at a party. He was very funny and good looking. First day was amazing. We went to dinner, saw a live band, and went stargazing. Next day, he becomes extremely pushy about intimacy and starts to go downhill from there. He tells me he can't wait to get me pregnant. He has fantasies about me. Didn't last much longer than that. Turns out he was starting to use substances too. Yeah, it's pretty clear he did. Story 2. Right after he picked me up, he ran into Walgreens really quickly and asked to put his bag in my purse. Naturally, I assumed he bought candy since we were going to the movies. Nope. Right after the opening preview started, he pulled out a brand new hairbrush, ripped the packaging off, did the fake yawn to put his arm around me while holding the brush and started brushing my hair. I didn't move because I was shocked that it was happening and didn't know what the heck to do. He then leans his head on my shoulder while still brushing my hair and starts smelling my hair. That was the last time I did not drive and meet on first dates. If you're into something weird like that, don't be a schmuck and pull that crap on a first date at the movies without talking to them about it. The concept of consent is a crazy thing. Story 3. Had a similar encounter with a dude, only we never dated. It started off as being friends, me making it clear that I was not interested in dating anyone. Crap escalated to him starting arguments with me and trying to manipulate me into getting what he wanted. I constantly told him I wasn't interested in having a boyfriend. So his response was to say that he didn't want a girlfriend, just someone to cuddle with and have intimate moments with and talk to about his life. You know, like a girlfriend. The end point for me was when he realized that me telling him to back off meant he would recruit his friend to basically spy on me. This guy was constantly dropping by my place to chat. When I did eventually go on a date, the friend magically showed up 10 minutes into it. I confronted the guy and threatened to report him if he ever contacted me again. The last I heard from him was when he texted me to let me know he was starting to work at a restaurant everyone here frequents. The sort of heads up I appreciated, but didn't respond to. No need to give him any chance. Story 4. Went out with a guy who seemed normal. I'm private, so I didn't know where I lived. Social media, nothing but my phone number, which was just a burner as I was living in Paris and needed something cheap to communicate. End of the first date, we start discussing politics and religion. We held different viewpoints, but we were both calm and rational. Never got heated. Next day, he sends me multiple long paragraph texts saying he didn't like argumentative women, that I was dumb barking witch who needs to get hurt. No man wants a woman who debates him. Legit quote. Flooded my WhatsApp with extremely long paragraphs of that nature. I leaned on the detached side, so I laughed and blocked him. An hour later, he sent me more deranged messages on Facebook. Again, he didn't have any of my social media info, and my Facebook is under a different name with a random email address. Screw you, bitch. Don't ignore me. Blah, blah. Slightly alarmed, I blocked him. Next day, my email, the one I use for friends and families, flooded with messages from him. My Instagram, not connected with my email or Facebook and is under a random username, was flooded with his comments. Somehow he gets my real US phone number and sends me texts saying he found out where my metro stop was, knew the area my house was in. That freaked me out. Somewhere there, he mentioned how he hates American witches, how the last American witch put him in jail when he was last in the US and studying as an international student. Anyway, I would have gone to the police, but I was leaving for Portugal the following week, so I just kept him blocked on everything and changed my US number. If only he used all those skills to get a job. Story 5. This was more than one day, but it was still pretty early in the relationship and is so weird. I thought it was worth sharing. Hope you guys agree. Not my story, but happened to a friend's sister. Friend and I were in college. My sister was mid-20s and getting serious with a new guy. It seemed fantastic, and she was starting to think he was the one. After a few months, things started getting serious, and he told her there was something important he needed to share. She was thinking he wants to move in or pop the question and getting pretty excited. Goes over to his place on the big night, barely able to contain her excitement, at which point he shows her his secret room. It was really a walk-in closet, but he had it set up with a huge replica of a Smurf village and liked to play there in his free time. Like all of his free time. More than hanging out with friends or anything. Acting out storylines with the Smurfs and pretending he was one, too. That was a big part of his life, and he hoped she was as into it as he was. She was not. God forbid a man has hobbies. Jeez. Story 6. I went out on a date with someone I met off POF. It was cute and seemed fairly normal. We met for coffee, went back to my place, yada yada yada. It was a good time. About a week later, a friend of mine in another state posted about how she found a high school classmate of hers on her state's offender registry. I decided to see if anyone I knew was on it, or if there were any living near me. So I did a search of my state's registry. Well, 3 guesses who I found on it. He has a common name, but I knew it was him because the picture in the registry was the same one he used on Plenty of Fish. There was no second date. The universe gave you a sign, girl. Story 7. Okay, so I was first introduced to him as my parents' friend's son, and my parents were gushing about how he's such a great church-going guy and will definitely take care of me and make sure I'll behave. While I was alone in LA for college. We hung out a couple of times, which seemed normal. He asked me out, and I said yes as a screw you to my parents. First day was okay. He seemed normal. Really quiet, shy, and awkward, but it was adorable. Second date, he comes off as pretty intense. Told me he attempted to end it all just because his ex dumped him. He wasn't cheating or anything, it just didn't work out. Okay, a bit TMI, but still okay. We kissed at the end of the night, and he told me he wanted to have a baby with me. I kid you not. Oh, heck no. I was pretty creeped out by now, so I was trying to figure out how to dump him gently. I was still young, so I was still nervous about dumping people. Plus, he was the only person I knew in the US since I just moved. My friends were still overseas, so I emailed them for help. The next day, I was walking in between classes when I ran into him. My college is in LA, lives in Irvine, and that's about 1 to 2 hours drive away. I never told him my class schedule. Apparently, from stalking my Facebook wall, snippets of conversation I had with him and checking the university's list of classes, I figured out what classes I was taking, where they were located. What the heck? He proudly told me this as if it's the most romantic thing ever. I told him I'm not skipping Calculus 2 for him since that class is damn hard, but he wouldn't leave until we hung out. He asked if he could borrow my laptop to finish some homework, so I dumped him in my dorm room. I actually read through my emails. I forgot to log out and found the email I wrote to my friends where I told him how creepy he was. I came back to the room. He promptly threatened to end it all. I was stuck with him for 3 more months before I finally couldn't give a crap anymore and dumped him. He did attempt to end it all and sent me pictures of it, as well as a long essay detailing what he did. I wish I could feel guilty, but I really have no crap stuff to give. Well, was he successful? Story 8. I had a couple normal dates with this guy I met on Tinder. First, we went to dinner and just walked around the city a bit and listened to music and rode in a Ferris wheel. The second, I went over to his place and cooked us lasagna and we watched Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. When we were planning the third date, he randomly says he can't make it after all and sends me this. Yeah, it's just that I forgot that I'm a crabby person. I'm a schmuck and a liar. I'm boring. I hate literally everybody. I don't give a crap about anything. I don't care what happens to anyone, including myself. I think I'm better than everyone, but I also hate myself. Bad person, as in defective. Like a malfunctioning car engine is a bad engine. I thought I was just out with some friends and one of them was playing a really bad prank, but nope. That was the last I heard from him. Story 9. He seemed normal on OkCupid. We chatted a few times on Skype and watched Doctor Who in the span of a week. Then I met him in person and it went downhill. He talked to me about what he would be doing for the holidays and what we would name our kids and outline our future. I'm into some interesting things. He tried pulling my hair in public. I was super not happy with that. He even showed me a picture of a piece of jewelry he had bought me with my name on it. When I told him I didn't think it was going to work out, he called and asked me to give him another chance. And he wanted to know what he would do with the necklace he bought me and if I still wanted him to give it to me. The next day, I got a call from a lady friend of his that told me he had gotten in a car crash. He was the one hit and that he had mentioned my name, so she thought we were super close and dating and asked if I wanted to visit him in the hospital. I felt awful, but I didn't go. I knew if I did, it would only encourage or justify his feelings for me. Story 10. Context, my dad is a police officer and had a very sheltered, possibly a little goody two-shoes of a childhood in a little town full of elderly folks and young families. Met him at a party and we hit it off because we're from the same little town. First day went really well. Wonderful dinner and a movie thing. I was really excited to have found someone after a rather long spell of singleness, so I agreed to a second day with no hesitation. After day 2, sushi and drinks, I got in his car for him to take me home and he tells me he lives with his grandmother because his mom has a serious substance problem and will disappear for weeks at a time getting spiked. I thought that was already a pretty big bombshell for a second date, but he proceeded to tell me both his brothers were pretty deep into one of the Chicago gangs and had been arrested relating to crimes several times. I sat there for a beat, shocked, and he informed me that he'd told his brothers all about his new girlfriend and they wanted to meet me that weekend. I told him I wasn't comfortable with that, and he started screaming at me about being a judgmental witch, and I promptly fled and blocked him on every platform I could think of. Was he serious? Story 11. Damn, I have 3 that come to mind. Went out on a date with a guy I met at a Starbucks. Seemed nice. After the first date, he would send morning texts every day along with a morning selfie of him blowing a kiss. The selfies didn't stop there. Not just mornings, but multiple times a day, every day. I didn't block him because it just seemed so ridiculous it became a funny joke with my close friends. What selfies did Psycho Boy send you today? Then it started getting out of hand. Texts pouring in asking why I never texted back. Poor guy always having conversations with himself. I had to block him. Went out with a police officer. Gave a fake name. He found out. Too long of a story. It was crazy. Perfect example why I always give out a fake name when I meet a new guy. New kid in school. Really hot. All the girls were after him and were surprised he went for me. He was there for 3 days. 3 days. Halfway through his third day in school, he asked me out on a date that weekend. I said I couldn't because I have a study day with my classmate to practice Spanish. I asked my friend what guy it was, and before school ended, he harmed the guy in the hallway. That kid was mental as heck. Never saw him again, although he tried adding me on Facebook 2 years ago. 4 kids now and pictures of him throwing up gang signs. Dodged a bullet there. Story 12. We had a first date that went okay, except he went on and on about prenuptial agreements. Like he reintroduced the subject about 4 times. We both had similar houses and lifestyles. Anyway, I gave him the benefit of the doubt and agreed to go out with him again. About an hour before he was due to pick me up, I had a phone call from him. He explained he wouldn't be able to make it as he had been arrested and was in police custody. My response was, "What on earth for?" I'm not sure what I was expecting. It's a minor misdemeanor or a traffic violation. His response? For taking Jimmy Godden. Jimmy Godden was a local baddie responsible for buying up and burning down local amusement parks. The lifeblood of the seaside town I live in. He practically single-handedly destroyed our town. I don't know what happened to him after that. I never took his phone calls. I just can't catch a break with guys. Story 13. I joined Cupid right around the time it started and talked to a seemingly nice guy on there for a little over a week before exchanging phone numbers. He had a good job. Was attractive and funny and just seemed like a cool guy all around. The first time we went out, we met at an art museum for a few hours and had a great conversation. I left feeling good about it, and we both agreed we should see each other again soon. Apparently, his definition of soon was literally the next day. I had classes all the next day and didn't really get a chance to look at my phone, but when I did, I had 5 missed calls and at least 20 texts from this dude. The latter texts included things along the lines of, who the heck do you think you are to ignore me and waste my time? You're fat and ugly anyway, and I never would have fooled with you. I bet you have diseases. You're dirty. I was just like, what just happened? Yeah, what just happened? Story 14. I don't even know how to describe this day because it was so ridiculous. Our day was basically a 2-hour power walk around our town. I like walking as much as the next guy, but this guy insisted we keep walking the entire day because he thought sitting was a waste of time. Over the course of 1.5 hours, I learned that he hated noise, despite choosing to move to a noisy area, fat people, and would divorce his future wife if she ever started freeloading or got fat. How he's so smart, how people owe him because he was so nice to them, his car, how crappy and boring everything else was, how much he hated almost all music, how he thought everything was dirty and disgusting. Partway through the date, I started laughing every time he said he hated something, which made him mad, which made me laugh more, which made him more mad. Finally, he started taking digs at me, despite having already made it clear that he thought everything I was doing was dumb and that my arms were kind of hairy for a girl. That's when I tried to nope the crap out. His car was parked near my house, so we walked there together, and that's when he invited me to sit down. Apparently, he wanted to wait the 30-some minutes until the meter ran out and didn't want to be by himself. Best date ever. Will there be a second? Story 15. I had a blind date at a bar. I arrived first, grabbed a beer, and waited. He showed up. It wasn't late. Grabbed a beer, and we started talking. Things were great for the first 90 minutes or so. At about the time he's decided that he wants to see me again, he asks, "So, do you know any black people?" I respond with, "Yes. Some of my friends are black." He starts yelling about no racial mixing and some other messed up racist stuff. Average American date. Story 16. I had met a guy online and everything seemed to go okay. We chatted and it turned out we had a lot in common. He wasn't a drinker, so we met at Starbucks for coffee. He seemed like a nice guy, friendly, and was definitely up there in second date territory. Suddenly he asked me if my melons were real or fake. It was so abrupt, I was more weirded out than anything. I didn't think that was a pertinent question, so I brushed it off. He went off on a 30-minute speech on how fake melons were a sin on girls and why they were the downfall of the female gender. I wondered how scared he was by implants, and he declared that if we wanted to embark on the relationship, I couldn't lie to him about my melons, because, everyone always makes long-term plans in the first date. I was about to duck out when he reached over to verify that mine were real. When I smacked his hand away, he got super offended and I booked it home. Texts of apology and a request for another day came up, but I ignored him. Thank goodness my following online encounter wound up on a more positive note. He tried to what? Story 17. I went on a date with someone from Cupid and it seemed pretty normal. And I went on a second date and I was joking about how he could be some creepy dude from the internet and parked us out in the middle of an empty parking lot late at night to end me. And he brandished his weapon from his pocket. I was kind of freaked out for a moment and then he started laughing and saying that he was kidding and that he always carried a weapon on him. Not funny. Story 18. This didn't happen to me, but to a friend of mine. She started dating this guy she met online and the first couple of dates seemed great from what she's told me. It started to get weird when he was super apprehensive about taking her to his house. After dating for about 3 months, he finally brought her to his house, and what she saw made me laugh like I never had before. This guy from floor to ceiling had the biggest Princess Diana memorabilia collection she's ever seen. Princess Diana posters, furniture, figurines, toilet seat covers, you name it. It probably had her face on it. After seeing this, it weirded her out so much that she broke off the relationship. I feel bad for her, but to this day, it makes me laugh. God forbid a guy is a fan of someone. Story 19. I met this guy through some friends. We texted. He seemed nerdy and cute and fun and not terrifying in any way. I was wrong. We went on one date and it was great. Totally normal banter and goofy times were had, so I kissed him goodnight. He asked me inside immediately, but I did not go in because he lived with his parents. I live in a different city than this and visit where he is often, and periodically for about 4 or 5 months now, I get texts from him in the middle of the night, lamenting about how he wants to fool with me, how he's in love with me, and gives me ultimatums like, either we do this and date or I'll never speak to you again. Obviously, I take the latter, but then this happens next week too. This has been happening to me for almost 5 months now, 2 times a week and about 15 to 20 text messages each time. It's exhausting. Story 20. Not my story, but my best friend's story that's so ridiculous, it's amazing. So I met my fiance on Tinder, which inspired my best friend, Alicia, to give Tinder a go. She started chatting with this guy who seemed nice and normal, worked in finance, had his own house and car, etc. So she agreed to meet up for a dinner date. As always, she told me if she texted me asking for help, I'd call her up and act like one of my family members passed away and she had to leave right then and there. So she turns up to this nice restaurant, all dressed up, and he's nicely dressed, but very different looking than his picture. Now, Alicia is generously proportioned herself, but make sure her photos clearly show this. His photos, however, had to have been at least 2 or 3 years old. He orders the two of them a bottle of wine and they order dinner. He finishes his glass of wine before the obligatory breadsticks even come out, then pours himself another glass of wine and tries to play a drinking game with her. Never have I ever style, in the middle of the restaurant was just the two of them. Alicia laughs it off and goes to the bathroom where she frantically calls me, telling me I need to save her. So I called her 5 minutes later and saved her. She called me from her car, having been accompanied to the car park by him, then driving away as fast as possible from a random street. She said when she said she needed to leave, he finished off her wine as quickly as possible and then realized he'd forgotten his wallet and she had to pay for the whole thing, even though he had told her he'd pay for it all beforehand. She always offers to pay for half of her dinner dates, but when someone explicitly says it's their treat and they'll pay, you kind of don't expect to end up paying for the whole thing. Makes me so glad I'm gay. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 21. Very briefly dated a guy in high school who, after 1 week of a 90% online relationship, started talking about our eventual marriage and what a goddess of a stay-at-home mom I'd be. I never even mentioned staying at home and had a pretty clear idea of my career plans. We'd only gone on one decent date to the cinema before this started. The heck? I'd known him for a few years before relenting and finally dating him, but he seemed mostly normal up until then. Definitely escalated quickly and totally weirded me out. Story 22. Super awesome first date. Went for drinks, had a great connection, and had an amazing time. The next couple dates weren't as electric, but still fun. On the third, I was finding I was really having to do the legwork in conversation. Anyways, we do the thing. Partway through, we realized there's a bit of red liquid from me, which is not uncommon, and while it hasn't happened to me heaps, it's something I've experienced before. So no big dealio for me. I'm down to keep going. He, on the other hand, freaks out. Wide-eyed, he kept repeating, "What? This is so weird. It's just so weird." Like, dude, have you met a woman before? Sometimes there's red liquid there. No big deal. He's beside himself about this. Just can't get over it all. Okay, so we calm down, chat a bit, and he leaves. A couple days later, he texts me, "Hey, I had a great time the other night. We should do it again sometime. Really? Huh? Because I got a completely different impression from you. If a dude is gonna freak out in a bad way about my lady bits just doing their thing, then he ain't my kind of dude. Cut him some slack, maybe it was his first time. Story 23. I stupidly fooled around with this guy I worked with once. I knew he had a bit of a crush on me and I thought it was cute, but I made it very clear to him it was a one-time thing only and nothing serious was going to come of it. A week later, I was out at a gig and he wouldn't stop texting me. I told him I was at a gig and asked if he could please leave me alone to enjoy the night. The week after that, another girl I worked with told me she's messaged him that night, and in response, he basically said he was thinking of ending himself. She called him up and he yelled at her on the phone and mentioned my name. I left the job not long after that, never really spoke again. Story 24. This one is pretty mild, but I didn't actually make it through the first day. We were at a coffee shop attached to a bookstore and everything started out pretty well. It was a little quiet, shy or nervous, I assumed, but I coaxed some conversation out of him. After drinks, we started wandering around the bookstore, discussing our various interests. He asks me if I like Lord of the Rings. That's the first non-prompted question he'd asked. I say, oh yeah, I like it. My favorite movie is the first one. The other two got a bit repetitive with the battles. He's silent for a moment. Lord of the Rings are my favorite movies ever, and the books as well. I read the books too. I reply conversationally. They aren't bad, but not my favorites. He's silent again. Lord of the Rings is very important to me. I'm a little confused now. I like them, they're just not my all-time favorite thing, you know? Another long pause. The stare is oddly intense. Lord of the Rings is very important to me, and it's very important to me that you like it too. Well, you know, I say slowly, a bit cautious. We don't have to have exactly matching interests to be compatible, and I do like Lord of the Rings. I'm just not super passionate about it. That strangely cutting stare intensifies. It's really important to me that you like Lord of the Rings. At this point, I simply shrugged and resumed browsing, but let me tell you, I wrapped that date up fast and lost his number immediately. Luckily, my lack of intense passion for Lord of the Rings was enough for a turnoff that he didn't try for a second date. I don't know exactly what kind of bullet to dodge there, but I definitely dodged something. You dodged a man with hobbies. God forbid a man has hobbies. Story 25. My spouse once met a guy online. The first day was standard though, and for a second date, he invited her over for dinner. He had set the table with places for him and her and a handful of his favorite stuffed animals. So they sat and ate as though at a 5-year-old's tea party. There were many more plush toys looking on from the furniture and shelves. Another fellow, at first outwardly normal, began picking and eating flowers as they walked along. When asked if he knew about edible varieties, he confessed that he did not. He just liked trying them out and he's still alive and even later met his kid, so he managed to beat evolution. Remember, gals, have an out on your online dates. Tell a friend where you're going and bounce if things go sideways. Story 26. Pretty soon after ending a long-term relationship, I started getting to know this guy on Tinder. He seemed sweet, and our first few dates were actually pretty wonderful. It seemed like he was trying to do the whole rom-com date style. Snowy walks in town ending in snowball fights and hot cocoa, etc. About a month into seeing him, I left for Australia where I was contracted for work for 4 months. During that time, one of my close friends from high school ended himself. I told the guy he got upset because I wouldn't Skype him, saying things that, direct quote, I was wallowing too much and that ending it all was stupid and only cowards did it. I stopped talking to him for a while. I ended up speaking to him one more time once I was more comfortable with the events that unfolded. He then proceeded to tell me I'd be more attractive if I wore more makeup and changed my naturally curly hair for straight hair and to wear jeans instead of my normal skirts and dresses. Needless to say, I wasn't interested in a relationship with him anymore. He still messages me on Facebook trying to get me to text him. What a schmuck. Sounds like we got a psychopath. Story 27. Okay, so it wasn't exactly a date, but long story short, the conversation switched from astronomy and black holes to how much he'd like to harm a kid. In vivid description. Because the kid called him weird. I spent the entire weekend explaining the various reasons seniors in high school can't stop mouthy little kids a good 50 pounds out of their weight class for something as trivial as name-calling. Especially since the lad in danger was known for his rude and forthright mannerisms. A man-child. Story 28. Met him in Cupid. He seemed funny and kind of cute. Went to see a movie and had dinner, which was okay, and made plans to stay at his house the next week. His house was filthy, like it had never been cleaned, and he made me feel so uncomfortable. I told him after I left that we should just be friends, and he flipped out and threatened to come find me, that he was going to harm himself. He called me over and over, so I put a block on his number and blocked him on everything. Story 29. I get back to my apartment. He drove. We're sitting in the parking lot and he asks me to grab his phone out of the glove department. I open it up and there's a gun and two knives. I begin getting out of the car and he gets out as well. I assumed he was walking me to my door, but then he follows me inside and sits down on the couch. He asks me to sit next to him and begins twirling my hair and singing a lullaby. I told him that I had some plans later and thanked him for the date, to which he responded, "Perfect. I'd love to go to the get-together with you." I then panic and tell my mom to call me and ask me to come over. She calls and I tell him I have to go. He says I'll drive. I let him know that it's a family emergency and that I should go alone. He seems rather angry about this, but says okay. We both go outside and I drive away. My roommate texts me and asks what's going on because he's sitting in the parking lot outside in the hood of his car. I waited at my parents' house for an hour and he's still sitting in our parking lot, but in his car now. I ended up spending the night at my parents' house and he slept in his car waiting for me. I came home the next morning and he's awake and sitting in the hood of his car again and asks me if I'm ready to get breakfast together. Well, what happened next? Are you free from the guy? Blink twice if you're okay. Story 30. We met on Tinder. It was my first time meeting someone from Tinder, so I figured a blonde guy in a bow tie was a good choice. We went to see a movie and then got something to eat. We had a great conversation the entire night. Fast forward to the end of the night and he offers to drop me off at my apartment. I let him. I thank him for walking me home and he asks if he can come up. I politely decline, but then he responds with, "I don't want to have intimacy with you. I just want to stroke your back with a paintbrush until you fall asleep, like my mother used to do for me." Unclear if he had a paintbrush on him or if I was going to have to provide it. I did not invite him up. God forbid a guy wants to stroke her back with a paintbrush as a hobby. God forbid a guy has hobbies. Story 31. His parents introduced me to him when we were 14. He was a popular kid, honor student, and on his high school football team. He was quite good looking and I was flattered when he showed an interest in me. He became progressively more creepy and started doing things like following me around, always staring at a particular area, trying to go into my room when I was sleeping and making inappropriate comments. There was one incident where we were at a Starbucks and he offered to buy me a drink. I said no, as I knew he would take this as an invitation. He physically blocked my way to the counter multiple times and almost grabbed my arm, but stopped when he saw people staring at him. After I rejected him enough times for him to give up, he found out about my Asperger's syndrome diagnosis. How does he know my medical information? I told my 9-year-old brother to say, "Lol, autistic idiot," for candy. I forced him to watch an episode of South Park which said that all autistic people do inappropriate things in public and act stupid. I later reported him after finding out he was physically and emotionally mistreating my brother. What even? Story 32. Went on a really nice first dinner date. No red flags. Second date over coffee, we discussed more about our careers and training in science. He told me that he was very interested in the 21 grams theory and worked by Duncan McDougall. If you're not familiar, 21 grams is the supposed amount of weight the body loses immediately after passing away. My date thought more data on this topic was required and believed the only reasonable way to perform this experiment would be to have row inmates volunteer to be weighed as they passed. Since this would violate ethics in the United States, these experiments would have to be performed elsewhere. It was absolutely serious and had clearly given this considerable thought. The whole thing gave me chills and I couldn't get home fast enough. He should volunteer. Story 33. We met at a bar. He was a bouncer and we hit off a bit, so I gave him a number. A few days later, we went on a date. It was pretty cool and we talked a lot. I'd mentioned I was in between jobs at the time, and so he asked about some of my skills and said he would keep his eyes peeled. A few days later, he calls me. Says he's found me the perfect job. He sets up the interview that he'll pick me up and we'll get together. I politely declined because I don't believe in going with someone to an interview, and I requested the address of this place so I could do some research in the company to prepare. They wouldn't give me the info nor the name of the interviewer or the company. Nothing. My gut said something felt off, so I politely declined the assistance and got off the phone. 10 minutes later, he starts blowing up my phone. I left one single voicemail out of 22 calls and said that I absolutely must let him pick me up and that he'd be in trouble if I didn't. The next thing I know, it's 9:30 at night and he's banging on my door and windows, shouting I have to go with him. I called the police, but he was gone by the time they got there. I filed the report and the officer told me he thinks it had to do with a cartel because I was living on the border of Mexico or Texas at the time. Story 34. My friend has these stories and I'll share my favorite of hers. So she was whistling at this guy and he seemed to be reaching a point of excitement, right? He then asked, "Could I, finish inside?" She was totally taken aback because they weren't even being intimate, so it was super awkward. She responded with a firm, "Absolutely not." He then said, "Okay, well, could you turn to your side?" She did, thinking, all right, maybe he just wants a little space or something. But then the guy started to, let's just say he directed his actions toward her ear. She was bewildered. Of course, things going through her head are, is this normal? Do normal people do this? Do people enjoy this? And my friends and I could not contain our laughter at her poor situation. I love her and her stories. Okay. Story 35. Mine is definitely the boy who faked substance coding. I agreed to go out on a date with him as he was very handsome and funny, but as soon as we were alone, he tried to take advantage of me and I had to literally throw him off of me. I told him that because of this, I no longer had any feelings for him. He got extremely emotional and said he was going to end it all, then ran away to a park. My friend found him, who didn't know what happened, and called me saying it was shaking really bad and that he said he had retched several times and that he had drank 4 or 5 hour energies and drank 2 bottles of cough medicine. Turns out he was faking it so I'd feel sympathetic towards him and only let it slip once I said I was going to call an ambulance. Worst day ever. Story 36. I had a guy spook after the 3rd date. He faked a week-long hospitalization and faux illness to get out of having dinner and could only text in between rest. For someone so commitment phobic, he really tried to commit to the bit, even initially sending me photos of him sick in a bed and sending me updates. Anytime I offered to come visit, he'd shut it down. This is when I learned that as women grow older, they can smell male lies. He might have gone away with it if he didn't post to FB about how much he enjoyed the new Game of Thrones, while he was supposed to be internetless and hospitalized. He texted me the next day to tell me how he didn't want it spoiled or was excited to see when he got out. In hindsight, a true joy, although it drove me nuts at the time because I was half aware how he was. I'm much less naive now, but he's still probably impotent and using younger girls as objects for his ego. The extent he tried to take the lie when I confronted him was seriously weird or pathetic. Story 37. We met online. He was charming and funny. We differed. He's conservative, I'm left of center, but not by much. Both divorced, heavily involved in our kids' lives. Understood my need, emotional, yes, but also safety and just plain single mom scheduling to move slowly. Things got weird when I learned he's a member of Oath Keepers. Wasn't familiar at the time, but my Google foo filled me in. He brings a firearm with him everywhere he goes. He stands me up for a 4th date. Apologizes profusely, gives appropriate explanation 45 minutes after he was supposed to be there. A week later, I found out he's still married when he's texting me photos of his trip with his kids and his ex-wife posts the same photos on Facebook, only with her not cropped out, and tags him. Conservative values my hind leg. Story 38. Not my story, and it wasn't a date, but I had a friend who worked at a bank in high school. There was a man who would come in and hit on the tellers once a week. The guy was also the parent of a classmate. After a while, he started getting really creepy. One day, he walks into the bank and waits in my friend's lane, even though she's busy and other lanes are open. He has a weird grin on his face. When she asks him what he needs, the guy pulls out 3 photos of her as a child and goes on and on about how she was an ugly duckling and how beautiful she is now. Only one of these photos was from a 10-year-old yearbook. The 2 others had no freaking idea how he got them. They were personal photos that were not on any social media or website. Just her playing in the yard as a kid. Long story short, she started shaking. Police were called. They declined to do anything since the guy was the parent of a classmate and said the photos were from a school trip. Her manager couldn't ban the guy from entering the building. She quit that job a few weeks later. I just Googled the guy's name and he's now a registered offender. Went through her lane almost weekly for 2 years before the photo incident. The cops didn't do anything, even if those photos weren't supposed to be with him. Story 39. First day was normal. Beach, ice cream, taught me how to skate, all that stuff. Eventually started dating and then he told me all the details of his life, starting with the alcohol and substance misuse. Told me about all the stuff he's done and he also told me about all the people he's harmed. All the stupid antics, all the experiences due to hanging out with a horrible crowd. I felt sorry for him. I genuinely did, and he felt guilty about all the things he did because he was in a genuinely bad place. However, I didn't know his life was that messed up. He told me bits and pieces on our first day, but nothing too personal, so when I found out, I was shocked and felt quite betrayed. I'm 100% against most of these things for private reasons, so it was really hard for me to accept it. However, for 2 years, I stood by him and watched him go through withdrawals, relapses, the whole lot. And now he's completely sober and works a full-time job. He doesn't rely on deals or any job on the streets. He works as an electrician and he's starting to fully experience life the way it's meant to be experienced. We're very much in love and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with him. Wow, an unexpected good ending. Story 40. I'm a fairly tall girl, 5'9.5", and I was asked out by a guy that was shorter than me, 5'7". I don't discriminate and have no problem with shorter dudes. Most of the guys I've dated have been about my height or slightly shorter or taller, and he seemed to dig the fact that I was taller than him, would compliment me on my long legs and such. On our third date, I decided to wear these new platform sandals I'd bought. On our previous 2 dates, I'd worn flat shoes. Well, the guy went Mussolini on me, told me to go back home and change my shoes, accused me of trying to humiliate and emasculate him. I was caught totally off guard. I'd been so laid back and normal on the first 2 dates, I had to ask if he was joking. It wasn't. I ended it there and went home. Story 41. Not a first date. Met a guy during a college summer program while in high school. Started dating long distance. Ended up at the same university. I chose my goal school. He followed me. So the long distance ends and we still can't go on a date. The guy's allowed to go out with friends, but has to have proof for his parents and has to check in via Skype and have dinner with his parents otherwise. So I tried for a coffee day in between classes. Dude literally tried to serenade me in public, which may have seemed sweet, but he wouldn't let me go to my class until he finished the ballad. That, coupled with some stuff I'd let slide because of the distance, tipped the nope scale. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. Catch you in that video.